think I should be good.
You are or not?
Yeah, I'm fine. Small momentary lapse in internet connection. Good morning, everybody. All right, good morning. Nothing. Brief moment of loss of internet, but that's what we get for moving a router while I'm trying to log on. So, good morning. How was everybody's evening? Miss Laurie, I hope that tomorrow morning is a cold and snowy day in Maryland. I hope. It is my want and goal. Good morning. Yes, Dr. Mike is here. Can't have a Saturday morning without Dr. Mike.
Because I bring Sizzlies.
Yes, he brings me breakfast and my caffeine. Don't judge me, I don't drink coffee. This is my Dr. Pepper flavored coffee. Good morning. Woo. Yes, fingers are crossed. Looks like it could be a southern snowstorm, and you know what southern snowstorms mean. All right, well, let's get started. Let's get on to our educational lesson for today. So perfect timing, the heat went off, so now you can hear me even better. The AccuQuilt, our focus today is going to be AccuQuilt strip dies, specifically that they're more than, you can use them for more than just cutting strips. They are a very valuable die for your use. So we're going to look at all of the things, or some of the things. I'm sure there's even more things that can be done with them, but I'm just going to focus on what I mainly use them for here in the store or in my quilting. So the strip cutters themselves make for quick work in cutting precise strips. So they are no sliding rulers you have to worry about. There's no miscuts, squaring up strips, things like that. So, and they come in a variety of sizes, which we'll go over in a minute, and you can use it to cut borders and binding, tote bag handles. I mean, any kind of strip that you need to cut, the strip cutters are there to be able to cut them. And the smaller the strip you're cutting, the more difficult it is to be accurate with a regular ruler. So if you have to cut like 1-inch strips, it can be very difficult to be super accurate on such a small strip of fabric. You're using a large ruler and things along that line. So it's much more accurate with the AccuQuilt to cut, especially those super, super narrow strips. Ideal for scrappy, okay? Create your own jelly rolls, okay? Lay your yardage, your extra yardage, your scraps on top of the strip dies. Use them to cut into strips. You can cut 6 layers of fabric or scraps, doesn't matter whether it's full width of fabric, as long as you have 6 layers, you can cut through it one time and cut through it accurately. I personally would not cut 6 layers with my regular rotary cutter and ruler at one time. It's definitely it's kind of like, you know, paper. When you take a pair of scissors and cut multiple layers of paper, your top one is the actual size and your bottom one gets bigger. That's also the same in reality when they cut clothing out and mass manufacturing clothing. You know, they take hundreds of layers of fabric and lay it on top, and then they cut out a particular piece. And that's why you can put on one pair of size 10 pants and they're too little, and one pair of size 10 pants could be too big. And they're the same style, same manufacturer, just a matter of where it fell in that pile. So 6 layers is where we can cut accurately on the AccuQuilt. And the strip cutters are sized to include 1/4-inch seam allowances. So when I refer to a 2.5-inch strip cutter, that is the size of the strip it's going to cut. Okay. And then if you sew it on both sides, it's going to be a 2-inch finished. So when I refer to the strip cutters and their sizes, these are the cut sizes, not finished sizes that are there. Okay. So we have 14 sizes available. These 14 sizes will fit in the Go and the Go Big. Okay, so the Go is the hand crank one. The Go Big is the electric. You can see there on the side, we have everything in the 1-inch size. You have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The Go Me or the Go Baby, which is the smaller version, we only have a 2.5-inch strip cutter available for that particular machine, and it cuts 2 2.5-inch strips on the board. And the reason for that is because the 2.5-inch strip die is the most popular and the must-have strip die in the quilting world. Okay, because like I said, jelly rolls, bindings, things like that, we work a lot with the 2.5-inch squares, 2.5-inch strips. So the 2.5 is our most popular. On the Go Baby or Go Me 2.5-inch die, like I said, it cuts 2 strips. And on the standard size Go and the Go Big die, it cuts 3. So those are available in a variety of sizes for us to use. So let's take a look at the dies and what they look like. And so on the dies, the newer dies, now you may have some of you may have been with AccuQuilt a long time and your dies may not have these silk screen guidelines. They are on the die to help you with orientation to make sure, one, that you're at a true 90 degrees or straight, as well as additional lines for different degrees of cutting for additional options. So we have a 90-degree line, you have a 30-degree, a 60-degree, a 45-degree line. Okay. And those are the ones that you see here, the green arrows pointing to. And then the die blades, the actual blades in the die are 23 inches long, and they are the ones that you see here with the red arrow pointing to them. And those those blades are 23 inches long, and that allows you to be able to cut fabric the way that it comes off a bolt. There are no crosswise dies, crosswise blades in these strip cutters, so you don't have to worry about cutting off an end. Okay, the blades are only running top to bottom. There are no blade that's running left to right in the die. Okay, so you don't have to fold fabric a second time. You can lay it the exact way that it comes off the bolt and be able to cut your strip the full width of fabric. Okay, so a couple of things. Because there are no crosswise blades, the lengthwise grain rule does not apply. And if you remember, on an AccuQuilt, we want to run the lengthwise grain through the machine of the lengthwise grain of the fabric through the machine, so that it just, the lengthwise grain doesn't stretch as much as crosswise. But because of the no crosswise blades and the nature of this particular die, we don't have to adhere by that rule. We actually are going to be running the crosswise grain through the machine, okay, because otherwise we would need a machine that's like 24 inches wide if we were going to run it by the lengthwise grain. Typically, if you're going to be cutting the entire die board full of dies, you can cut your fabric a 1/2 inch wider than the die is from outside blade to outside blade. And I will show that here in a minute. So for example, on a 2.5 inch die, the one with the 3 strips, you would cut your fabric about 8 inches. So we want to go a little bit past the outside line on each side of the die, just so you can get a nice straight edge. If you have one of those older dies, you can use a permanent marker like a Sharpie and a standard ruler to help you draw your lines on for those 45s and 60s and 90 degrees, should you need them on your die. So it's not that you have to get a new die. You can draw those lines on the dies that you currently have. If you have fabric that is longer than 23 inches, which is 24 inches the length of the board, you can fold your fabric in half widthwise. Okay, so if you wanted to cut a 60-inch wide piece of fabric down into strips, you just fold your fabric in half again. And remember, no more than 6 layers. Okay, and then rather than, remember, we get static electricity that builds up between the mat and the fabric and the die. And when it comes out of the machine, we want to give it a little bit of love, rub across it to kind of help cut down on that. And we want to slide the mat away from the fabric rather than picking it straight up. Okay. And if we slide it away, everything will stay in place versus lifting it straight up. You're going to end up with probably everything going everywhere. Some sticking to the mat, some sticking and sticking to the die, and just not as pretty. So let's look at, obviously, the first thing that we typically cut with a strip cutter is going to be cut strips. And this is the start to every single shape that we need to cut. We start with the die, okay? I am specifically in these instructions talking about a 2.5 inch strip die, okay? This instructions applies to every size strip die that's out there. With 14 of them, I couldn't give you all the numbers on when to, based on the size that you're cutting. So we're just gonna focus on 2.5. Miss Elisa, I see your question and I will answer that. Good question. So I'm gonna cut a piece of fabric that is 8 inches wide, because on the 2.5 inch strip die, we have 3 blades, okay, because we cut 3 strips. And from edge to edge, blade to blade, it's about 7.5 inches. So I'm going to cut an 8 inch strip. That's going to give me about 1/4 of an inch on each side of the outside blade to trim off so that I know that I have a perfectly square, straight, true edge. We're going to place that on the mat. We're going to position the fabric so that the fold of the fabric is perpendicular to the blade. And so you'll see down at the one end of the blade, that's the left-hand end of this picture, that there is a screen printed line that's at a true 90 degrees, okay? And it's straight. So you're gonna line the fold of your fabric up there, okay? And that will then be what you load into the machine first. So we wanna cut from fold to selvage. And that way, if there is a wrinkle or a ripple or something in your fabric, it will kind of push it out versus cramming it into the fold. And then that's when you start getting elbows in your strip. So we want to cut from the fold out. Obviously, you're going to cover it with a mat and then roll it through the cutter. Okay. And you're going to end up with, if you do a yard of fabric, 13 strips. Okay. You can fan fold. So if this was cutting a strip 8 inches wide, if you wanted to cut a strip that was 24 inches wide, and you could fan fold 8, 8, 8, and that's going to give you your 6 layers, cover up your mat and run through. That'll give you 9 of your strips. Okay. And so you don't have to cut them into 8 inch widths. You can fan fold as well. Okay. So the question was, how do I know when to change a mat? Now, we typically tell you, or kind of the estimation to change a mat is when it stops cutting, or you get one particular area that doesn't want to cut. It's not cutting all the threads consistently, things along that lines, is when it's time to try another mat. Okay. So they can last a long time. Remember, they can be used right side up, wrong side up. They can be used at angles. They don't always have to be used in the same direction. Okay, so that also try to help lengthen the life of your mat as well. Okay, they last you pretty long. I think they do. I have a couple that are several years old. I don't use them a ton, but they've cut a lot of shapes. And then I have some that you can just tell that are a hot mess and need to go in the trash can. Okay, so after we cut a 2.5-inch strip, let's talk about how to cut squares. Now, you can get a die that cuts squares, okay? And that's great if you have larger chunks of fabric and fabric that you don't want to cut into strips and then cut into squares. Those square dies are perfect. They come in your cubes. You can purchase things separately, that type of thing. But if you had to cut a bunch of 2.5-inch squares out of background fabric or something along that lines, think about, we've done the 10 Sisters Easy Piecing Grid. Okay, this is the perfect piece of equipment and technique for cutting all the squares for the easy piecing grids that we've talked about here. And I believe I did a breakfast club last year on the 10 Sisters Easy Piecing Grid. So if you don't know what I'm talking about and you're curious, you can go back and find that on YouTube. So once you have cut your 2.5-inch strips or whatever strip size you're doing, you're going to rotate those strips and you're going to align them with the die now along the 90-degree line, okay, down at the end, and you're going to load all the way across the mat, okay, all the way across the die. It doesn't have to be a certain number of strips. You can fill your die board full of these strips. They can be fan folded, okay, again, into 8-inch widths and no more than 6 layers. Carefully cover it with a mat, run it through the machine, and you will have squares, okay, when it comes out. So for example, let's see here. Okay. So here is your die board. Okay, here is a 90-degree line here. There is another one down at this end, which you can do the same thing. And I can take my 2.5-inch strip that I cut. I can lay it on my die here, lining up. I can take my next one and I can line it up as well, cover my mat. And when I come back and run it through the machine, everywhere that there's a blade, it's going to cut and give me a square. Okay. And it just one big massive square die full of squares at once. And a yard of fabric. It's going to give you 195 squares. And you can pretty much cut those in about 2 passes through the machine. And you'll have all of your squares that you should need at 195. So pretty fast and easy. While I'm here, we also have the next up would be diamonds. Okay. Diamonds are what we use to cut on these 45-degree lines, 60-degree and 30-degree lines. You would take your strip, okay? You would align it to the right of the degreed line that you want, okay? And so here's my 45. I'm gonna go to the right of that line. You need to make sure that your fabric extends beyond the die blade. Okay. And so if I were to cut this, I'm only going to get 2 diamonds. Okay. Because it goes all the way past there. I cut, and then you would end up with your 45-degree diamonds that come out of that. Now, so here's your 45-degree diamonds, just like I showed. The edge of that diamond, so it's a 2.5 inches from center point to center point, and then it's 3 5/8 inches in length, okay, for the 45-degree diamond. For the 30-degree diamond, same thing, okay. Using the 30-degree line, place your strip on the die board. You can layer and cut more than one, up to 6 layers at a time. Run through the machine, and the cut edge of that 60-degree diamond is going to be 5 inches. Or sorry, 30-degree diamond is going to be 5 inches. Sorry, I'll get my numbers here. And then lastly will be the 60-degree diamond. Okay. Ignore that. It says 90, but it's 60. I will fix that before I post this. Sorry about that. So 60, it's what you get for when you do this past 10 o'clock at night. Then 60-degree diamond done with the 60-degree line or the 30-degree line on it, same technique. And the cut edge will give you a 3-inch. So that's the 60-degree diamond. So you can see here that here are the 3 diamond shapes. Okay, now let me fix that while I'm at it. The diamonds, it's you know, for the most part, the your pattern is going to tell you if it's going to need a 45-degree diamond or a 60-degree diamond, and you can make the adjustments as needed for your particular pattern. It is, you know, your kind of thing, but it's great because, you know, they're all going to be the same. They're all going to be consistent in that aspect, and that you're not going to have to figure out how to angle your particular ruler, things along that lines for your project. Okay. Oops. Let's go back to that. There we go. All fixed. Now it says 60. Yes, exactly, Miss Dana. 90-degree diamonds are just squares. Apparently I had squares on the brain when I the diamonds to keep from stretching is starch. So if I was going to cut diamonds, my fabric would be fairly stiff, okay, and heavily starched. If I have to seam rip a diamond, the diamond goes in the trash and I start with a new one. Okay. No pressing with steam with a diamond. And yes, they are backwards. I will fix that. Man, I was very tired last night, I will tell you that. So starch your diamonds, diamond fabric before you cut it into the diamond shape, and that will help. Let me show you. So here, let me get a ruler. Give me 1 second. Let me go fix something here first, because that is going to drive me bonkers. Let me go fix my numbers, because apparently I'm crazy. I think my problem was I was trying to put them in numerical order and started copying and pasting wrong. Okay, so if you have an old die, okay, and you're wanting to put lines on it, let me grab a ruler. You're gonna want to grab a ruler. Okay. The first one I would grab would be a square, and use the square ruler to get your 90-degree line. Okay, you can use a smaller rectangular ruler as well, but I would use one of the die blades as your straight. Okay, and then get yourself a straight line. Then you can use the die blade, and you can position your, I just have to get my angle here right. Take the angle on your ruler. So most rectangular rulers are going to have 60, 45, and 30-degree lines. Okay. Line that angle up with one of the die blades, and then that will give you that particular angle. So the silk screens are labeled. Okay. They do have the number 60, the number 45, and the number 30s on them. And then this one down here says 90. So if I line up the 60-degree angle on the die board with one of the blade dies, it's going to run the 60. And then I can just rotate it, move it over a little, and get my 45, and then move it over a little and get my 30. So yeah, you can get those angles can just come from your regular rulers. Nothing special is needed to mark them. Okay. Oops, not that. My goodness, I'm off my game this morning. All right. So here we go. All fixed. So 45 degrees, 60-degree diamonds, and 30-degree diamonds. My numbers, my typed words all match pictures now. So the question was, can we cut strip sets? You sure can cut strip sets. Okay, so if you are going to make 4 patches or 9 patches out of needed to cut a lot of them for a particular project, you can cut your strips on your dies, sew them together with 1/4 of an inch, and press the seam. Press it open, press it to one side. It's completely your choice. If you, you just have to be conscious that on one side of the die of the, so here's a strip set. One side of this is already 3 layers because you have the strip and then you have the 2 layers of the seam allowance. So I'm not going to be able to do more than 2 layers of this because I've got 6 layers right there in the middle to cut. Okay. So take your strip set, whether it's 2 across, 3 across, 4 across, does not matter. Line it up here with either 90-degree line, completely your choice. I come a little above the die blade so that I can get a nice straight edge. You can fan fold up so that you can keep fan folding so that you get your strip sets. Fill the die, okay, until the die is basically full of strip sets from 90 to 90. Cover with a mat and cut. And when you take it out, these will all be cut for you. Okay, and then you can pick them up and put them right sides together. If you're really smart and you're going to stack them with the pieces that you're going to sew, offset the seam allowance so that when it cuts, they're ready to be picked up and sewn. And you're not taking 2 stacks and putting them together. So if you do, yes, if you press these seams open, you can layer more strips, okay? Because you'll only have, this will be 2 layers on each side. So you can get 3 strips high versus 2 strips. So if you laid these 2 strip sets on top of each other, okay, so these weren't cut yet. So let's just imagine I laid these on top of each other. My seams were pressed in opposite directions and I ran this through. Each one of these could be picked up and sewn with 1/4 of an inch. I'm not sitting here with 2 piles and then stacking them together, you know, matching them up, and saves you a little bit of time. Okay. Same thing can be done with your 9 patch strip sets. They're just 3 and 3s, 16 patches, which are 4x4s, can be done as well. So yes, you can cut subcuts or strip sets with this setting, with this technique. Yes, so what I have, just as a repeat here, my seam allowances are going opposite directions here. Okay, so this bottom one is going to the left, to the right, and this one's going to the left. And that way I've got, this would be 4 layers, and this here is 4 layers, okay, of fabric. That way these also nest together, and then they're ready to be fed into the machine, just like that, okay? So much easier, a little faster too, and then you don't have to spend all that extra time putting them back together, okay? All right, bias binding, because you can cut that on your machine as well, okay? So bias binding can be cut. I would not recommend using any more than fabric that's about 18 inches wide, okay? Because of the, you know, obviously you can't cut more than 6 layers at once. And if you get bigger into yardage, you're not going to be able to not going to be able to fold and layer as much in that aspect. Okay. And so we want to make sure that we get as much as we can, about 18 inches are where we're at. An 18-inch width of fabric by 45 inches, we can get on the die board without reaching the maximum of 6 layers. So in the pictures here, we're going to take our 18-inch piece, we're going to open it all the way up, and we're going to fold each opposite ends in at a 45-degree angle, okay? And we then load it on the die board, okay? And we're going to, I'm gonna show you here in 1 second, okay? And then we're going to take the extra fabric and hang off and so on and so forth. So there is a video that I have put a link here to. You can find that video as well on AccuQuilt. It's a link to AccuQuilt's video, so it's not anything that I did in particular. And you can find that somebody walking through it as well, but I am going to demonstrate it here for you. And then you can cut. Now it's not going to be continuous bias. It's going to be individual strips that you then sew together, which is just fine because sometimes cutting long bias strips can be a challenge and they can not be 100% straight. Okay. So here is I have my fabric. It's opened up and I have this end is folded up and this end is folded down at 45 degrees and pressed. Okay. If you iron the folds, you'll get a better cut. I'm going to come over and I'm going to load it so that the first fold is just past the die blade because we want to cut that. And then I'm going to fold from this end over to get this into a rectangle. Okay. And again, I'm going to come over and get it just past the die blade. And then I'm going to fold back. Okay. Kind of like that. Cover with a mat and cut. And you'll have your bias strips all cut for you, long bias strips. Okay. So it is possible to do with this particular technique for you to be able to cut bias on your AccuQuilt. Okay, again, like I said, there is a video for those that are a little more need a step-by-step video to walk you through it. This video here, this link right here obviously isn't going to work during the live, but at the I will post this presentation now that I have all of the issues fixed. I will save this presentation as a PDF and I will get it posted on to the YouTube section of our materialgirlsquilt.com webpage. And then you can click the presentation. You can download the presentation however you would like and be able to watch that video or click that link of that video in there. Okay. All right. I will also post it here as well for anybody who wants it now. Now, the other question was, if you have an 18-inch width of fabric and you fold it up on the diagonal so that it folds to the other side, this should give you a 45-degree line. I mean, I don't normally measure to make sure that's 45 degrees, but typically if you have the selvage edge that you fold up, that is usually going to give you a 45, okay, degree line for you to be. So I'm not usually super accurate in eyeballing that particular information, okay? All right. Now, lastly is mitered ends, okay? So many of us are familiar with, you take your strips, you join them right sides together at a 90-degree angle, sew, and then cut off the extra. Well, you don't have to do that with your AccuQuilt. You can actually use your AccuQuilt dies to get that particular shape or get that mitered end cut off so that you don't have the excess fabric that you're going back to cut off, okay? So you use either a flying geese die or a half square triangle die. And the goal is that the half square triangle or flying geese die needs to be larger than the strip set that you plan to use. Okay. And so the technique is, okay, so here's my strip. I've cut my strip. I need to get the end of my strip at a 45-degree angle here. So I'm going to use the half square triangle portion of my flying geese die. If you have a cube, you've got a half square triangle die in your cubes. Okay. I'm going to take my strip. I'm going to lay it on the die so that the edge of the strip is, let me zoom in here a little, that the edge of the strip is even with the bottom edge of the die. And I am over the center cutting line here. So I want to make sure that my edge of my fabric is over, okay, so that when it cuts that blade, it in that dog ear right there, that it's going to cut fabric off, okay? Now, the trick to this die needs cleaned, is how to put your mat on here, okay? Do not cover this full piece, this full die with a mat, because if you do, this is going to cut off, okay? And remember, if there's no mat, there's no cut, okay? So typically I use a small mat. We're gonna place it over that area, but I'm not gonna put the mat over where the rest of my strip is hanging off, okay? You can stack 6 layers of fabric. They all need to be cut right side up, okay? So don't leave your strips folded in half, because then you're gonna get 2 mirror images and they're not gonna be able to join each other, okay? So all your fabric needs to be either stacked right side up or wrong side up. They all need to go the same direction, whatever direction that is, okay? Put your mat on your die, making sure that you're not covering the straight edge of the die that would cut the rest of your strip off, okay? And then when you are done, run it through the machine, remove it, and then there is your angle with your dog ear, okay? That will allow you to join your strips and they be correct when you join them together. So you don't have to draw your line from corner to corner. You don't have to know which corner to corner to sew on, okay? And it's all there for you. The biggest key to this is to not cut the edge where the rest of your die is at, okay? That's the main goal of that, okay? So that way you don't chop off the end of your strip. Okay. Just some examples of things that are quilts or blocks that can be made with diamonds and squares and strips that are all cut from a particular strip die. Okay. Not a cube or a block, which you can and you have, but all of the shapes that you see here can all be cut from a standard strip die. Okay, nothing fancy. Okay, so there's a lot of really intricate shapes and things that you can do with just a strip die. Okay, at the moment, there is no promotion on strip dies. The only thing that we currently have is $25 off of cubes at the moment. So there is not a die promotion going on at the moment with AccuQuilt. $25 off cubes to the end of February 9th. And then there is $100 off Ready, Set, Goes and Go Big starter sets is what we currently have on promotion here in the store. Do I have any other questions? It's just a little bit or a lot that you can do with a strip die. So I figured that mitered end I threw in this morning. It was something I thought about at about 2 o'clock this morning and thought, you know what, let me talk about that because I think it's a forgotten technique with the AccuQuilt strip dies. And so I just threw that in this morning. Yes, Miss Judy, I don't have a die pick over here with me at the moment. Maybe Mom will hear me in a minute and bring one over. The die pick you want to use to pick out, it's kind of like a dental tool to pick out the stray threads. I'm trying to see if I have a pair of tweezers here. So the let me change the camera here. So this is just a pair of tweezers, but you can use a pair of tweezers to get in and do that, pull out what's all hanging out in that corner. AccuQuilt sells a die pick and it's much sharper than this pair of tweezers is. And you just get in there and just kind of get it all loose. I usually take a lint roller and roll across the my die and pick out what is in there, because this buildup of lint and threads in a die will also keep the die from cutting correctly. So if you're having an issue with a die not cutting and you've replaced the mat and it's still not cutting, I would take a die pick and clean along the edges of the die to make sure there's no threads that are there. Do I have a suggestion for a must-have cube? Cubes. Okay, so cubes are coordinating sets of shapes that go together to make quilt blocks. Squares, half square triangles, squares on point, flying geese, parallelograms, things along lines, and all of them in a cube go together to make a block. The thing to remember about a cube is a cube size is based on a 4-patch. Okay, so if you're talking an 8-inch cube, that means that the square in an 8-inch cube is going to be a 4.5-inch square. Okay, because it's 2 across and 2 down is going to give you an 8-inch square. But if you use it for 3 across and 3 down, an 8-inch cube is going to give you a 12-inch square. Okay. And then there are companion cubes to go along with the main cube in each size that add angles and corners and other things. The most popular cube is going to be an 8. That's the one that coordinates with the 2.5-inch strip and things along that lines. It's the one that gives us a 12-inch square in a 3 across and 3 down grid, which is where a majority of quilt blocks in the quilting world live, in that 12-inch square. So that's why the 8-inch cube is probably the most popular. I use, a lot of people like the 10 because the 10-inch cube is where you find the 5-inch square and the things that coordinate with a 5-inch square. And so the 10-inch cube will give you things, blocks that kind of coordinate with 5s and 10s, layer cakes, charm squares. But probably the most popular one that everybody has, at least to start with, is going to be an 8, the 8-inch cube. So, I mean, I've done things with the 8, I've done things with the 9, 6. Right now we're working on a block of the month that is a 9-inch square, and we're using the 6-inch cube. And the 6, 8, 9, 10, and 12-inch cubes, they're all the same shapes. They're just different sizes. This quilt, while I'm thinking about it, this quilt here, these 4 patches, okay, all cut on a strip die, okay? Strips were cut on a strip die. These were 2-inch strips, cut on a strip die, sewn together, and then subcut on the strip die. They were, I then tossed them all in a bag and then pulled them out and sewed them together to get the scrappy look for it. So it wasn't anything in particular that I stacked up. Do I have a 6-inch cube in stock? I don't know. I will text you, Miss Stacy. Cubes are, I have some over there. I may have a 6-inch cube. What strip goes with the 10-inch cube? So a 10-inch cube, you're going to want a 5-inch strip. Let me see, the 5.5-inch strip that's going to finish at 5. Okay. So you want the 5.5-inch strip is the strip size that matches the 10-inch cube. Okay. The 9-inch cube has a 5-inch, the cut 5 finish at 4.5. And then you've got the 3-inch strip also matches the 10-inch cube. The cut 3 finish at 2.5. So there are, kind of things. If you look in your cube and look at the sizes of squares or half square triangles that are in your cube, that will help you determine which cube is going to work with your, or which strip die is going to work with your cube. Specifically, if you look at the square that is in your cube. Yes, the American Glory block of the month uses 6, did I say 6-inch cube? I think it was 6-inch cube. Harmony's using 6-inch cubes. But yes, so they are standard basic shapes. So great things to have. All right. If there aren't any other questions, well, I hope you found this morning helpful. Yes, Miss Joanne, best practice would be when as you're using a die, to clean a die. And then that way it goes back into the case clean and ready to be used next time. And you don't have to waste your time cleaning the die before you can use it. And that's TV work, you just sit down in front of the TV and clean your dies while you are doing that. You don't have to take the time that you've set aside to sew to clean your die. But I hope that this was helpful, kind of a give a new life to your strip dies, because they're not a cheap die. So I wanted to make sure that you use it to its fullest potential, because there are things that are forgotten that the strip die can do. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you all soon. Some of you I will see back here for class at 10. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.